Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone. Today we are continuing with our lectures on the Patisambhida Magga. Yesterday I couldn't do the class, so I moved the class to today. So far we have studied 7 wisdoms mentioned in the Patisambhida Magga out of the 73 which were possessed by the Buddha. Now today is the time to occasion to discuss about the Bhayathupatthaana Pañana ādinave Ñāna, which marks a very significant stage in Vipassana meditation, which is called Nibbida, or the dispassion, this enchantment of towards the conditioned realities. So this wisdom is threefold based on the stages, how it sees the sankharas, how it contemplates about the sankharas. First stage is called Bhayathupatthaana Ñāna, seeing the conditioned realities as dangerous or as dangers. Then ādinave Ñāna, seeing the disadvantages of the conditioned realities. Then finally becoming dispassion, arousing, having dispassion towards the conditioned realities, which is called Nibbida-anupassana. These are the 3 different stages of the same wisdom, and which is a very interesting position or an attainment in the Vipassana path towards the liberation. Then afterwards, after dispassion, what should be developed is the equanimity towards the sankharas, and that is another stage which we will be discussing next week. Then comes the attainment and the supramundane attainments. So in this lecture we are going to talk about Bhayathupatthaana Pañana ādinave Ñāna. Bhayathupatthaana Pañana ādinave Ñāna. Bhayathupatthaana Pañana ādinave Ñāna. So as in other wisdoms that we have discussed so far, this also has 2 phrases. Bhayathupatthaana Pañana, the wisdom in the Bhayathupatthaana, or wisdom which is the Bhayathupatthaana. And then ādinave Ñāna, the wisdom in seeing the disadvantages. And when these 2 wisdoms arise, Nibbida naturally follows. Nibbida will follow naturally. Now, what is Bhayathupatthaana Pañana? Bhayathupatthaana is Upatthana. Upatthana means manifestation or approaching and standing close to something. Upatthana. Sometimes Upatthana refers to attending or serving someone, supporting someone, especially a sick person or an old person. Some senior monks do have their Upatthayakas, the ones who always attend them and care about them. Now, Bhayathupatthaana means there can be 2 definitions on how this word is being formed. Technically speaking, Bhayathupatthaana means the wisdom which sees the conditioned realities as dangers. Now, this wisdom was followed by Bhanga Ñāna, Bhanga-anupassana, which we talked last week. Bhanga-anupassana means conditioned realities arise and vanish, and we focus more on the vanishing aspect. And then it sees the vanishing of the reality, of the wisdom which saw the vanishing of the reality. So these are sankhara, conditioned reality. Conditioned reality. And this is the wisdom. I shall use the Pali terms, that would be easier. Sankhara, This is the wisdom, Ñāna. With the Bhayathupatthaana Pañana, this is the, Bhanganupassana. Bhanganupassana. One sees, now the wisdom sees the vanishing of the reality, and then the vanishing of that wisdom is seen by the Bhanganupassana Ñāna. So when this is repeatedly done, what happens is, he understands, the yogi understands these realities, the conditioned reality and the wisdom, as anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Anicca, dukkha, and anatta. The three characteristics are known. So this wisdom is followed, not followed actually, preceded by another wisdom called Udayabbe Ñāna. With the Udayabbe Ñāna, one sees the rising and falling of the conditioned reality. It also sees how the samsara happens due to conditions. It's a broader wisdom which we shall discuss later. Then this wisdom was followed means actually preceded by Samma Sambuddha. And also, having seen the rising and falling, one needs to contemplate with Udayabbe Ñāna these conditioned realities as anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Then with the Samma Sambuddha Ñāna, he just focuses on conditioned realities without seeing the rising and falling, without much emphasizing on rising and falling. He just contemplates these conditioned realities as anicca, dukkha, and anatta. And then this was preceded by the Kankavitarana Pache Pariggaha Ñāna, which sees how conditioned realities are conditioned by other realities, causes of this state. So this is the Pache Pariggaha. Seeing the conditioned realities. And this was preceded by, this is how it goes, moves, Nama Rupa Paricheda. Nama Rupa Paricheda, which says there is only two different elements, Nama and Rupa. There's nothing other than that. Right? So, in this regard, he understands the non-selfness, Nisatta Nijjiva, non-selfness of the realities. Here, he understands the conditionality, which is also a part of the anicca and anatta characteristics. Now, in this way, the yogi has seen that Nama Rupa are conditioned by Nama Rupa. And first he understands there is no Nama and Rupa, and those Nama Rupas are conditioned by certain causes, not created by the God or has not appeared spontaneously. And then he contemplates those Nama and Rupa as anicca, dukkha, anatta, which is not a compulsory thing, but it's better to do that. And then he sees the Nama and Rupa as rising and falling, and contemplate them as anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Even at this stage, to make it more clear, non-selfness is a part of anatta. Is a one facet of anatta. Conditionality, seeing the conditioned realities as conditioned realities, is a facet of anicca and anatta. Both characteristics are seen to some extent, but not completely. So those characteristics, anicca, dukkha, and anatta, becomes very clear to the mind, and the yogi understands them thoroughly only after seeing the rising and falling. Rising and falling. Just seeing the rising and falling is not enough. One has to understand the three characteristics embedded in these conditioned realities by seeing the rising and falling. And then the mind is more inclined to the vanishing of the realities, and also he sees the Nama and Rupa vanishing. At the same time, the wisdom which saw these Nama and Rupa, which understood the passing away of Nama and Rupa, is also vanishing. So Namas arise and Namas vanish, Rupas vanish, and then the yogi knows the wisdom which understood the vanishing of the Nama Rupas also vanish. And he sees the anicca, dukkha, anatta characteristics of the realities and the observer as well. Ñātanca Ñānanca ubho vipassati. So now when this contemplation is done, he understands nothing in the world, nothing in the entire universe, nothing in the 31 realms of existence. We can find any permanent thing or anything that can be attached to, or that should be grasped as mine, or to something that should be kept as a refuge or something. So there's nothing. If one is born in any of the existence, he is sure to pass away and he is sure to die from the. It can never be a permanent relief. So when seeing the vanishing of all the reality, and also the observer, the mind which saw the vanishing of the reality, he understands there's nothing which is permanent in this world. So then what happens, he starts to see all these conditioned realities, including the observer. So we can put all them into one category and know as Nama and Rupa. Nama and Rupa, since they vanish, they are seen as dangers. This is a characteristic of dukkha lakkana actually. Dukkha. Right? Why are they dangerous? Because they vanish. You cannot stop. There's no way to prevent their vanishing. So if one possesses something, it is bound to be separated from that, either by the destruction of that reality or the destruction of your own. Now, then, this is the wisdom that all the nama rupas that were seen through the entire process of vipassana, now he's seen them as dangerous. So technically, this is, psychologically speaking, this is a very logical thing which happens to the mind, and it makes sense actually. When someone is seeing that entire universe is composed with nama and rupa, which are not self, and they are conditioned realities, and they do vanish instantly, having arisen, and they are not permanent reality, they don't last forever, and whatever duration they exist, they are bound to vanish, even the generations, lineages. So what happens is, when someone has such contemplation, such thorough contemplation, understanding, obviously he would see the world as dangerous, all the nama, not to something that was to be afraid of. So that is called Bhayathupatthaana Ñāna, seeing the world as dangerous, seeing the nama rupas as dangerous. Now, when someone keeps on seeing this and investigating the entire world, like all the nama rupas in his contemplation, he sees more and more disadvantages of these nama and rupas. Why? They are constantly vanishing. That is the main reason. And then he starts to see all the disadvantages. Dangerous, as dangers. Then disadvantages. All the disadvantages. So both of them comprise facets of the dukkha lakkana. More emphasis on the dukkha lakkana. So why these are dangerous? Because no one can stop. Because if someone possesses them and get attached to them, he is bound to suffer one day. And why there are all disadvantages? Because one of the main characteristics of these disadvantages, or we can say perils of the conditioned realities, is there is no refuge here. No refuge. There's no refuge. Because now, if there is something that we can rely upon, even the area, even the region is full of disasters, if there is some person or some place at least where we can stay safe, or we can be free from, if we approach there, we will be free from those dangers, we will still try to not to abandon our motherland where we have been living. Because these nama rupas we have been possessing them throughout the entire samsara. This is our we are the host and this is our birthplace. We haven't experienced anything other than these nama. We are stuck in this sankhara world. There's no experience we have other than these sankharas. Therefore, even panyattis are based on sankhara. So we are stuck in this sankhara world. Therefore, now we are going to abandon this and to get out of these sankharas. So unless we are sure that there's no place or no opportunity for any refuge in the entire universe, we will not give up this attachment, or we will not try to abandon them and move towards the new destination. So therefore, when seeing the disadvantages, one must see that there is no refuge in these sankharas. There is no refuge and there is no one who can give protection. None of the sankharas can act as the refuge, and there is no remedy or no medicine or no person or no power which can prevent the vanishing of these sankharas. So all these dangers, disadvantages are following. Why are all these sankharas dangerous and also not things that should be possessed, and they are all full of disadvantages and perils? The reason is they vanish instantly after they have arisen. So the nature of anicca is the basis for all these issues. Now the person sees these sankharas, and what happens when he keeps on seeing these dangers, especially that there is no refuge and all the other troubles that one possesses or one encounters, these namarupas arise due to namarupas, what happens is he gets dispassion about the nama and rupa. Gets dispassionate about the nama and rupa. N, R, nama and rupa, become dispassionate. Disenchantment or dispassion arise. This is sort of a feel like it's a wisdom. It's a wisdom. It's something that has to come up. It's not something that we contemplate. We are seeing the disadvantages. We are seeing the dangers. But dispassion is sort of an emotional thing. Don't get it wrong when I say it's emotional. It's something, detachment happens. It's a natural thing which follows when you see the disadvantages and dangers. Imagine you are being attached to a certain person, and when you keep on seeing the bad side of the person, or that the harm that is bringing him to you, naturally the attachment will reduce, and you would finally get detached from that person. It's not love and detachment cannot be brought by force. It happens through a process. And what is the process to get this dispassion? It is seeing the dangers and seeing the disadvantages. In order to have a clear understanding or a grasping or a view or understanding about these disadvantages and dangers, one needs to see the vanishing, not only of the realities, but also of the wisdom which understands this vanishing. And in order to mind to observe the vanishing, first he needs to see that these sankharas rise and vanish. So arising and vanishing has to be seen to know that these sankharas have limited existence. So first Udayabhya Ñāna has to be known. So then why do these sankharas arise? Because of the causes. So due to causes, these sankharas arise, and he has to understand the causes as well, because to have clarity about the origin of these sankharas. And one should also know there's only these sankharas, namarupas, and there's no self other than that. So this is the process. So starting from the namarupa paricheda jnana, gradually we improve the wisdom. And we have to hit this place of dispassion, because we are going to get out of this sankhara world, out of namarupas, and to attain the liberation. So for that, there has to be dispassion. So dispassion is one stage in vipassana. This is called balava vipassana, the strong vipassana wisdom. Everything below dispassion is considered as young or weak vipassana. even including the Bhanganupassana. Including the Bhanganupassana. These are the three stages. This is the process where we get the dispassion. So we have to treat all these three. Bhayathupatthaana, ādinava, Bhayathupatthaana, ādinava, and Nibbida, Ñānas as a one unit. Final outcome is Nibbida. Dispassion has to go. Now, dispassion is the place, it's a very important junction in the path of the Vipassana practice. Because that is the moment now the yogi is really disgusting or being fed up with the Nama Rupas. And now he would delight in the process of getting out of it and also the liberation. And this would be followed by another wisdom which is closer to an emotional state, which is called munchitu kamyata, a desire to get out of sankhara. It's also a wisdom. They are not desires or any chanda or any attachment or any emotion. All of these are wisdoms, but these wisdoms like these two wisdoms of Nibbida and munchitu kamyata have some sort of emotional element in it. And that emotional element, now think about it, we cannot forcefully fall in love with someone. It has to happen naturally, especially if it is a romantic love. It has to happen due to many causes. Buddha said that the commentary said that it happens either due to a connection from the past lives or continuous association. But still, it is an outcome of a process. Either due to a connection in the past lives or continuous association is obviously due to unwise attention when compared in the when evaluated in the in the realm of noble truths, because there's nothing to be attached in this world. But somehow we know that you cannot forcefully love someone, especially you cannot romantically love someone. It has to come. It is something which happens naturally. In the same way, and also detachment happens, is also a process. It may take some time, especially if someone is separated from the other person and spend a lot of time without him and focusing on other stuff, then naturally the detachment or the attachment would reduce over the time. Or sometimes seeing the faults, always observing the bad side of the other person. And also if that person is bringing harm or putting you down or causing the declining of yourself. So then naturally we would start to get detached. So detachment and love happens. They are outcomes of processes. So in the same way, this entire process of Vipassana, these are all basic stuff. Sometimes we say the Vipassana starts with Udayabbe Ñāna and Bhanganupassana is the pivot, like it's a culmination of Vipassana as we discussed last time. Yes, but still these are all preliminary acts compared to the next stages. Why do we do all this Vipassana practice? Is to become dispassionate about the sankharas. So detachment has to happen. Now this detachment, dispassion, is the outcome of this entire process. And this detachment is called the strong Vipassana wisdom. Compared to that, even the Bhanganupassana, according to Theravada tradition, is considered as a young Vipassana wisdom, Taruna Vipassana Ñāna. Now after dispassion, what happens? It would be followed by a desire to get out of sankharas, and then a very thorough, vigorous Vipassana practice, because there's nothing to do other than contemplating the three characteristics to get out of the samsara or the sankharas. So then it will be followed by a vigorous practice called Patisankhanupassana. Is it the same thing will be done? Contemplating anicca, dukkha and anatta, contemplating the rising and falling, and contemplating the rising anicca, dukkha, because anicca, dukkha, anatta will be evident only when you see the rising and falling, but it's not necessary at the last stages, because rising and falling is prominent. He has already seen it. You don't need to always see the rising and falling and to get the understanding of anicca and dukkha and anatta. You can just keep on contemplating them as anicca, dukkha and anatta because you have already opened the gate. Seeing this bhanga, seeing the vanishing of the realities. Some teachers emphasize that after the bhanganupassana, you have to keep on seeing the rising and falling. It's not necessary actually. What you are supposed to do is to contemplate the realities of anicca, dukkha, anatta, because now you know that the purpose of seeing the rising and falling is to know that these conditioned realities have a limited existence and they are existing as different, separate temporal units, that they were not before they are arising and they will not be before after the vanishing. So seeing the rising and falling is opening the gate to understand the three characteristics. So when you have opened this gate and thoroughly developed the bhanganupassana and also have reached the nibbida level, now what we are supposed to do is to just contemplate the three characteristics of sankharas again and again. But what happens here is, now we'll be talking about this in detail in the next lecture, in next week, because it will be an interesting one, the next stage. Now the dispassion has come. Now this dispassion has to be subdued, because now someone is detached from the sankharas, but there is sort of an emotional element in this wisdom. So that emotional element has to be removed. That dispassion element has to be removed. And one should be very economous about these sankharas. You should not be affected by seeing the perils of these sankharas. Because at this level, when seeing the sankharas as realities that vanish and do not last long, this observation affects him. This is sort of an affection. Affection means it has affected the person. So due to this effect, what happens? The person gets detached from the sankharas. It's a good thing. It is a necessary thing. But still, the perils or the dangers of the sankhara, the disadvantages of the sankharas have done a change in our mind. That is a very necessary part, but that change is too much for a liberation. In order to liberate, the mind has to see the disadvantages and still be economous or still be very stable, should not be having those emotional aspects in the wisdom. That's very vital. So the next stage would be santittana, nibbida, santittana. Santittana means observing them without falling into any of the extremes. Extremes means not getting dispassion about them or not getting attached to them. So one has to see the realities as they are with a very economous mind. Some teachers say that this nibbida or the dispassion is an outcome of a defilement. What is it? The self-view for the noble beings is the asmimana, the idea of I. The self-idea was dominating here. The reason is, now when the yogi sees all the disadvantages and dangers, the mind naturally, even the yogi being unconscious about it, naturally apply these disadvantages to oneself. Since I am here, so I will be born. If I will be born in any of the worlds, even in the divine realm or even in the Brahma realm, that all the disadvantages befall on me or befall me. So therefore, the yogi's dispassion is an outcome of the view of self or I. Therefore, in the next stage, following the desire to liberate and also a vigorous meditation practice, which is called Patisankhanupassana, the yogi is supposed to contemplate the non-selfness of the realities in depth, in various ways. We shall talk about them in the next week actually. So when someone contemplates the non-selfness thoroughly, It's not only that characteristic, he has to contemplate all the three characteristics time to time, but with more emphasis on the non-self aspect. Then what happens? The dispassion changes into equanimity, and he's just observing the sankhara. He knows they are disadvantaged, and he'll never be delighted on them, about them. He'll never wish for those sankharas, but that dispassion element will be gone. And the great desire to attain the liberation would be controlled. Now, because he understands, because there's no eagerness as it happened in the Munchitu Kamyata level, will happen in the Munchitu Kamyata level to get liberty. Because these wisdoms of dispassion and desire to get out of sankhara are backed by the idea of self. Backed by the idea of self. Because it's I who will experience all these disadvantages. It's I who wants to get out of this samsara. That's the normal desire a person who has not done vipassana has in the beginning. When we listen to the Dhamma talks or the teachings given by the Buddha about all the miseries in the samsara, we feel that we have to get out of this samsara as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will be experiencing all this suffering. And even though it's a wholesome mind, even though it's good, it's very important to move towards the renunciation, but still the I factor is haunting. I factor is haunting throughout this process. So the next stage after dispassion is even to get out of that I factor thoroughly and to know it's just sankharas are experiencing. Sankharas are having all these three characteristics. It's the sankharas which are suffering. There's no person who, a new birth to happen, even if a new birth takes place, it's not that I will be suffering. It's just sankharas that will be suffering. But then what happens? Technically speaking, one would argue that then he would give up the practice. No, he understands thoroughly. Even if those are sankharas, the kilesas are still prevailing, and all the sankharas possess those natures that the suffering will be felt. And in those lives, those sankharas will be taken as mine. So there is some sort of a default failure or defect in this process of sankharas. So he will never ever let it continue. Because some people ask, if there's no sankhara, if there's no person, then what is the purpose of this liberation? Because even though there's no self, these sankharas act as if they are a self. And the suffering is felt. Wrong decisions are made. And above all, the wrong way would take these sankharas as I and behave like a self. And truly believe in a self, actually. Then, therefore, there is some sort of a inbuilt defect in these sankharas. You cannot just give them up and say, like, okay, let this computer be there. It doesn't matter even it lasts long or not, because it is not a self. It's not similar to such an inanimate thing. These nama rupas are quite different. So therefore, in the Sankharupekka level, it's called Santittana. The equanimity arises, a strong equanimity arises, and he understands that the only sankharas are existing, and he has seen the sankharas true natures, and he's not very much eager in getting out of nibbana, but he will never give up that desire, or desire means the effort to get out of sankhara, and he'll be very equanimous and calm and just keeps on observing the sankharas. There are three characteristics. The next stage is the most powerful vipassana level. And that is the stage which leads to the liberation, which would give the breakthrough. So next week, when we extend this chart, things would be very clear. Now, our attention is dispassion. So at this dispassion, which is a very interesting position point in the vipassana practice, and this dispassion is followed by, dispassion happens in three stages. The first is Bhayathupatthaana Ñāna. So how it is explained? This is the wisdom in the manifestation of 5 factors: Upada, Pavatta, Nimitta, Ayuhana, and Patisambhida. Upada is the birth, Pavatta is existence, Nimitta are the conditioned realities, Ayuhana, striving for birth, Chetana, and Patisandhi, rebirth, as dangers. He sees them as dangers. It means the entire samsara, all the nama rupas are seen as dangers. And also, this is the wisdom in mentally taking Gahana and approaching those 5 factors as dangerous due to being endowed with oppression. So, simply speaking, all the nama rupa, the entire existence, the whole process of samsara is seen as dangerous. That's the it manifests to the mind as dangerous and is seen as dangerous. The word Bhayathupatthaana Pañana is formed in the following 2 ways. The object that manifests as a danger is called Bhayathupatthaana. The object, the nama rupa themselves and the entire samsara manifest to the mind as dangerous, right? Danger. So that object itself is called Bhayathupatthaana. The wisdom in that object is called Bhayathupatthaana Pañana. That means the wisdom which understands that object, that Bhayathupatthaana object. In the object means not connected, it's knowing that object. It's upon as an it takes that object as an takes it as an object. The second explanation is the wisdom that attains the conditioned realities, considering them as danger, is called Bhayathupatthaana. The wisdom which approaches these objects, all these sankharas, all these existence, and all this as dangerous is also called Bhayathupatthaana, right? Because it approaches them, stands close to them, and sees them as dangerous. According to this formation, the meaning of the Bhayathupatthaana Pañana must be taken as Bhayathupatthaanang Pañana. Here the Bhayathupatthaanang is in the neuter gender nominative case. Then we move on to ādinave Ñāna. So seeing the sankharas as dangerous is Bhayathupatthaana Pañana. Then what happens? ādinava Ñāna is the wisdom which sees the disadvantages of the conditioned realities. To a yogi who develops the Bhanganupassana by seeing the vanishing of conditioned realities, sankharas appear as great dangers. It will naturally appear as great dangers. To the yogi who contemplates as past realities vanished, present conditioned realities vanish, future realities will vanish, right? Past vanished, present vanishes. Present vanish, and also future will vanish. The wisdom of Bhayathupatthaana arises. That's natural. We already discussed about it. When he develops the Bhayathupatthaana Ñāna, he starts to see no refuge, security, or protection in any of the existence, because no one can prevent this passing away. No one can prevent this passing away, right? He does not wish for or grasp any conditioned reality. All the conditioned realities appear to him as full of disadvantages. They manifest to him as full of, and the very pivotal characteristic is there's no refuge. There's no way to stop all these misery. Likewise, when all conditioned realities appear to the yogi as dangers due to the Bhanganupassana Ñāna, so actually, due to Bhanganupassana, when they appear dangers due to Bhanganupassana leads to Bhayathupatthaana, that's what is meant here. He sees the disadvantages which are tasteless and unsatisfying. When seen so, the ādinavanupassana Ñāna arises. Due to Bhanganupassana, sankharas appear as dangerous. When he develops this, he sees more and more disadvantages. And especially, there's no refuge in these sankharas. So, now, when the yogi thus sees disadvantages of the conditioned reality, he becomes dispassionate towards them. He becomes dissatisfied with them. He does not delight in them. As a golden swan who is delighted in the root of the Chittakuta Pabbata. Chittakuta Pabbata is a sort of a beautiful mountain mentioned in the books. Does not delight in a pit at the entrance of an outcast village, very dirty place. A swan who is living in such a beautiful area would never delight in such a foul place. The yogi, then the yogi does not delight in any of the conditioned realities pertain to any of the realms, because even he is offered the greatest offering or the kingship or whatever, for what? Because it would eventually vanish. I don't want anything that is impermanent and that would eventually get lost. He has delight in only 2 things. 3 types of contemplation, because this is the way he sees the truth. He is delighted in the truth, actually, seeing the truth. So that's why seeing the truth is one of the greatest tastes that we have, right? Surpassing any taste, in my opinion. So then only Nibbana observing Nibbana would be something much greater than that. So he is delighted in the three types of contemplations, Anupassana and the Nibbana. Okay, obviously, because Nibbana is the conditioned state, unconditioned state, free from all these perils. Seeing that would be a real delight, obviously. So then the three types of contemplations and Nibbana. So he's only delighted, but he hasn't seen the Nibbana yet because he's a Purvadana yogi. He's contemplating them based on the experience or the knowledge and the practice he had. It's just the inference. But for the yogis who are practicing for higher noble paths, who had already attained Sotapannahood, they can contemplate Nibbana directly. His mind inclines and bends towards the Nibbana. At that time, the Nibbidanupassana wisdom arises. The Nibbidanupassana wisdom arises. So another very important thing. Now see, all this Nibbida, Bhayathupatthaana, ādinave, Nibbida, all follow. Why do they appear as dangers? Why do they appear as, why all the disadvantages become eminent, prominent? And why someone is dispassionate towards the sankhara? It's because they vanish. They arise and vanish. So the main problem of all these sankharas is the impermanence. Anicca. Anicca is the impermanence. So leaving out impermanence, the anicca characteristic, we'll never be able to explain this dhamma. So this anicca is that much influential and had spread all around the entire doctrine. And it's just a joke if some people try to change this word and call anicca, CCHA, and to define it as something that doesn't exist according to your desire. That's also a characteristic of sankharas. But the main problem of these conditioned realities is the impermanence. So it's a joke that some people, especially in Sri Lanka, it doesn't happen in other countries because all the ones who have studied the doctrine is very prominent, very eminent, very obvious to know that it's not about anicca, it's just anicca, impermanence. There's no argument among the scholars on this. Some monks who have just tried to interpret the Dhamma as they want based on their desire and what they have understood have tried to distort the Dhamma. It's a real baseless thing that some people have brought, which has no basis at all, because even the entire process of vipassana in Theravada, in the doctrine, has been explained based on this characteristic of impermanence. So this doctrine is so much logical, and you can see how the Bhayathupatthaana, ādinave, and the Nibbida arises based on the observation of the vanishing. So if you are going to remove this impermanence thing, characteristic of impermanence from the doctrine, so the entire process of vipassana and everything have to be altered. Yes, some people want to say that the entire Tripitaka or the doctrine has been completely distorted throughout the process. Yes, they have appeared 2,500 years and suddenly got the divine wisdom to understand everything. Ironically, the ones who can see how Buddha appeared in such places like Sri Lanka and so forth cannot tell what we ate 5 days ago. Will not be able to tell my great-grandfather's name, but they are capable of seeing 2,500 years back and where the Buddha appeared, and this is the place, so forth, and they are able to see this. And some say that one Thera, not a Thera, actually it's a Samanera, who is able to go into that state and see through his divine eyes, and he is coming into synchrony with the true nature, true past. So these are just jokes. Because if you are able to see 2,500 years back, why can't you just see 1 year back and say, on this exact day, what did I eat? Even he will never be able to recall what he ate even. But he is able to see the Buddha's past lives, where Buddha appeared and so forth. So, and those are the people who are trying to say that it's not it's not anicca, it should be anicca. It has no basis at all. So it's even a waste of time going for an argument and try to prove that, because the entire doctrine of the Buddha is based on this characteristic of impermanence. Impermanence is the real reason why this entire world is full of misery. That's the main reason. It's the king of all the problems. And you can see why the dispassion happens, why the disenchantment happens. Seeing that all the sankharas are temporal. Therefore, so the entire process, and it's very vital that one see the rising and falling and see the vanishing, or even of the observer, the mind, the wisdom which observes. So that will be the gate. And till that, the very most important point is, till the end of the Bhanga, till achieving the Bhanga-Anupassana, even developing Bhanga-Anupassana is considered a preliminary act in Vipassana. The strong Vipassana arises when we get detached from the Sankhara, seeing their vanishing and seeing all the dangers and disadvantages. And the next stage, which we are going to talk next day, is like you have to balance that emotional aspect of the wisdom and be more economous about what's happening and to accept the reality. And some teachers would say, accept the reality from the beginning. No, we cannot do that actually. We cannot do that because dispassion has to come. Dispassion has to come. So that's the process. Then one can argue if dispassion is due to this influence of the defilements, and would the Nibbida Ñāna would appear to an Arahant? No, this is a different case. It's a repetition of what we have done. A Sotapanna person repeating his own process, the process he came, can enter into Palasamapatti. But if he wants to attain the Sakadagami level, he has to do the Vipassana again from the Udayabhe-Ñāna. He has to start it again as a new process. And he'll be having new experience. A new experience means he's touching the areas that he had not touched. He's giving a very thorough investigation into the Nam Rupas. When he's going to attain the Palasamapatti, he's repeating what he had done. So all the wisdoms can appear when he does the repetition. Because even though the defilements are not there, So what happens is, so even when we are reaching the Arahanthood and this process, Nibbida arises to an Anagami person because his Asmimana is not removed. So therefore, this is a very complicated and psychologically, we should call logical, not provable, a logical process that is taking place in the Vipassana practice. And this is a very nice wisdom. And the final sentence in the handout is that, as stated in the Patisambhida, Magga, the three wisdoms of Bhayathupatthaana, Ñāna, ādinavanupassana Ñāna, and Nibbida-anupassana Ñāna are three stages of the same wisdom. Three stages of the same wisdom. So I hope you enjoyed the lecture, and next week, hopefully, we'll be doing the next wisdom about Sankharupekka Ñāna. And then we move on to Gotrabu, Magga, Phala, and the Pachchuppanna Ñānas as well. So I wish you all the best, and may all of us gain the utmost liberation by this merit of discussing Dhamma, and also may this merit support for the prolongevity of the Buddha Sasana. Buddha Sasana Chirang Titta Tittatu, Buddha Sasana Chirang Tittatu, Buddha Sasana Chirang Tittatu, Sadhu Sadhu Sadhu.